Well, would you look at that? Okay, so I got the channels in. I just spritzed them with primer. Now this section here, this is where it needed to step down, and I need the opportunity to be able to pull these out. So I can. One would say, well, why don't you just come in here? The way these arms sweep, just a moment here. I'm gonna power it up. So they'd hit this. I did round those, but they'd hit right there. Boom, boom. If I keep the material thickness, there you go. See, they're just going to touch. They're just going to touch the window molding. It's going to be up in there. I left the step in here just to push the molding out across the center line in there. I don't particularly know at this moment whether or it's going to be an issue or not, I guess. I don't think so. But I'm thinking the glass will hold it here, and then when I put the channel in, this will just be a void, like, I don't know. Well, this originally was, didn't have, you said the trim going around, and the molding went in there. The trim that went on might have had a relief for it. I don't know. But I wanted to form it around the corners. I mean, I don't know. And for all practical purposes, the molding could have been molded with that radius in it, but not the molding that I'm using. So I am in the testing phase, and this step out does clear. But you can, if you've watched the videos up to this point, you probably heard me show several different variations, and that's the design process when you're actually, redesign, if you want to call it that. That's what you go through. You go through all the iterations to number one, have an operating working system, and then you run into clearances and you run into several other obstacles that you need to overcome. Now, I probably could have, going back, there's always coulda, woulda, shouldas, right? You could have possibly mounted these up in here. Even this tapers out, but you could have I could have mounted the windshield wiper motors up in here. But then, how am I going to park them? They'd be at such a severe angle. I like this look where they're down and short and cute and all that stuff. And I just got that 1 inch. Pretty standard radius, come down if I want them to sit flat with the header. So I'm happy with it. And I know it's going to work. I have 100% confidence it's going to work. It's just that I may need to do some, another opportunity. I guess I did think of this, but if I can find the variations of window molding. So this is the one I'm going to use. It's got a little lip that goes around. And the top, this end is the channel. I can just relieve a small amount out of that side, and I can relieve a small amount out of this side. Just for clearance when I go in and stick it in. That's what I'll do. That's what I'll do, because I only need, about the thickness of 16 gauge is what I'm looking at. So, I mean, there, resolution. Anyway, very happy with it. And we get to move on to something else. Thanks. Well, I did get the Garnish molding out, and I hit it with that laser, guy at work, or the owner of the place that I work, one of the places, but I work for him. It's a fabrication shop, but he has a laser cleaner. So I shot this thing, and all 7 of these, 6 windows and 7 pieces. Yeah, 7 pieces. Got an extra window garnish. They're you know, they're certainly not perfect. So I'll have to get in and start straightening them out and replacing some metal and all that. Remember, the car is chopped, so I got to take 3 inches out of them and all that kind of thing too. So that's kind of fun, though. Does not take long to clean them with a laser cleaner. That's for sure. Hey guys, so I got all the, as you know, I got them all laser cleaned. You know, it does a good job. I mean, there's some wire brushing. It's all line of sight, so it's very hard to get into those areas. In here was a channel. This is the top piece, and it was a channel for the window, where the window goes all the way up. But by and large, they're good. You know, there's a little bit of wrinkle and stuff in some of these. I gotta work some of that out. You can see I did some work on that. But for the most part, they all came out good. This one, we can see that it's the only one, you know, that she was pretty cancered out. So I'll have to replace that top piece. There's a little dent there that I still got to work out, and that kind of thing. But straightened out the corners on them. There's the rear ones. There's a lot of, a lot of the forklift went in there. You know, so there'll be a little bit of a filler on them, but I'll work them out for however I can get into them, you know, because it's all formed, right? It's hard to get in underneath here. Again, with a screwdriver. Where is that repair? Must have been the other one. Yeah, this whole corner was just crushed. And so I'll get in there on that edge with the TIG. She opened up and all that. And I'll finish that off. But just getting in there with a screwdriver. You can see this. You know, for me, I don't have a lot of experience in shaping the metal and finding the right tool and all that stuff, but I make it work, and I'm learning as I go. So basically, then I'm working on the door frames. I'll grab this one because it doesn't have a cord going through it. I marked them all up 6 inches. This is an ideal spot because that's a bullet, you know, graze off of there. But that seemed to be ideal. And you can see, you know, it's, with the chop, it's too big. So I'm taking that 3 inches out of them by fitting them into the door and using the original screw holes. So I chopped in the middle of the screw holes. That was somewhat strategic. I thought about that when I was going, so that I can not have to modify that. But also, you know, it winds up being the best location. So here I just basically ground off what remained to get the shiny metal. I put a little TIG in there. I held this in a jig, so I only had that much room to work in. That's my excuse. But I am learning, and I will get them all welded. Penetration is spectacular because this is such light steel. Anyway, and then I'll get all those dressed out and finished. Well, would you look at that? I have a window channel. All the way around for my guides and my felts. I'm welded. That one turned out way better, but than that. It is fully welded. That's a weld edge. But man, not the easiest stuff to weld, but I got her in. And she fits beautiful. So, on to the next one. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. On to the next 7, and then we'll be done. Well, well. Excuse me, I just finished this one. This one, both of the rear ones were actually good pieces. This one I think probably came off of the door. Of course, that door was wrecked, but I had an extra, just grabbed a bunch of them. These two are symmetrical. So this would go on that door, that would go on this door. That's the only place in the whole car, of course, because of the shape. And these taper down. This one here, I had to remove the top piece from another section and re-weld it on. Okay, and then of course shorten it and get him in. And, you know, turned out good. I sliced the hinges to follow the radii of the trim, so they just kind of meet up to the top here, the hidden hinge. That's just magic marker right there. You can see my cut line there. And then the other side, you got the power. Same thing. This one, when it was in good shape, just had to shorten them 3 inches. Everything turned out good. So now I'm going to go to work on the rear quarters, and I'll have to fab that one and that one. So it's going good. I'm actually moving along pretty good. The first one took a while. The second one went a little faster. These two I could do together. I'm just getting confidence in my measurements and marking in my method. So it's going very well. The only thing that I noted, you know, on a 100-year-old car, or pardon me, 96-year-old car is 94-year-old car is that the screw holes, you know, they must when they on the assembly plant, they must have drilled these, even though they're very close. This screws at a little angle, but the holes are all wallered, you know, I suppose because of the 47,000 times that those trim pieces may or may not have come off, and just simply time. So what I'll do is I'll go in and I'll have to just plug all those holes, and then I'll come back and re-drill them. These here, I'll mark, you know, and drill. There are 2 on each end, both doors. I saved the locations, but the holes, I had to re-drill this one and this one. It looks like, yeah, I've got the top one, but I don't have the bottom one because I did cut right on that line. And so, both sides. But, it's not a big deal. I'll drill them out. I'll get them done. Hi guys, you can see the light in there. Okay, so basically I made a cardboard cutout of this. Okay, even out of a refrigerator. And in here, on that side, it's actually on both sides, I put a gusset in right there, because I wanted to tie all that structure. I wanted to tie all the structure for this beam. There's a gusset up there that's welded into here, and I wanted to tie everything together in that corner. It's a hinge point, the door opens, yada, yada, yada. Now, on the window frames that go in, this interferes with that gusset. So with my cardboard cutout, I identified with my hole gauge that 3 inches, backwards 3. Was a satisfactory diameter for that location. So I grabbed a piece of 3-inch pipe, again I had an extra, had a couple of extras, or there's another one, okay, pieces, clamped them on and rolled them around the 3-inch pipe. So now, yeah, these will get welded in. I'll have to eliminate that hole, but they'll get welded into this structure here to make the window completely round. At the top, it'll clear the gusset and it'll tie in just nicely. Now remember, on my car, I did the hidden hinges, right? So with the hidden hinges, right there, that's a doorstop. They encroach in, so this was an operating window originally, and it's not going to be an operating window any longer. So when I get the trim pieces in, the molding or the gasket that goes in there will be the same as the rear windows and these quarter windows in the front window, and it'll encompass that whole radius. So it is radiused at the bottom, similar to the door, actually identical to the doors, and you can see that little crop right there on that side and that side. Of course, when you get the door trim in, you've seen them where they radius down and, you know, I don't know, hide things if you want to state it that way. On here, the distance isn't such that I'm going to be overly concerned because the rubber gasket's 7/8 of an inch deep. So I'll more than likely have a bottom on there for the 7/8 gasket. It'll just expose, you know, it'll hit the radius, but you'll see more of the gasket. How can I do this? So the profile I intend on using is that. Okay, so this will be the interior side. So as that goes around, I got it stuck there. As that goes around the radius, which will be very, very hard to demonstrate effectively. You know, one way of looking at it is, okay, so this gasket, this gasket will lay into that corner and should not expose it. The gasket's too wide for this, I think. Well, maybe it'll work. Geez, I should have just thought of that. It's going to drop into the door, but this channel is different, but we can get kind of a view. It's not holding it dimensionally like it should, but now see, that's the kind of thing it'll look like. Of course, it's folding out a little bit, but it'll follow the window and make sure it's a clean look when it's done. So those are the intentions so far. Of course, proof is in the pudding. If I need to, I'll have to review, you know, other options, but we'll wait till we get close here. Well, guys, she took a little. This corner was a little banged up, so I welded the edge on it. It was just, again, a fork had hit this. I straightened it out. Got my 3 inches taken out, and I put that corner on. The weld is over a little bit. I struggled with it, but it did come, and I filled that screw hole. It's going to take a little, it's sunk in a little bit here, but realistically, 100-year-old metal. So got it all doweled up and ready to go in. See how she fits. Now this one has no mountings, it's just yet. There. So basically, there's that corner that I was talking about. And she follows the contour. There's a screw hole right, where the heck is it? Right there. Right here, and I know why, because that's what pushes that up, adjusts that up. This had 3 screws in it, so I strategically cut each side, and then this had some damage on this side. So my cut's higher on this side, but I wanted to remove the damage, which was on this piece a little lower. And I sliced it there, but I filled in that screw hole up in the corner. I'll have to remake that. Of course, it's too close in right now, but I'm just trying to get it to sit there. There we go. So we can walk around the other side. Take a look at them. So now you can see your radius is around the corner, but those 2 little triangles right there and right there. And when I probably, I thought a lot about that, I'm going to need to be pushing on that rubber. And even though it covers, I think I did a little experiment on the door, because it's the same thing, but there's a window that goes up there. I might just weld in a little piece with a half round, just onto the trim, just a flat area that gives it a that gives it a push, and just kind of closes it out. So then the theme will be the same across the door openings. And then here, I don't know, because I'll have to make that whole thing, but I don't want a window ledge per se on this. So what I'll more than likely do is a little bit of a different profile, maybe a half round like that is, an inside round, and we'll. Why am I so far? There. We'll do a half round, it's not a half round, but a radiused piece that'll look like that, and maybe put a bead around it, something like that. I don't know for sure right now, but it's got a mount in there, and then simulate this, but that whole shelf thing is not going to be for the rear window. So I do anticipate having a package tray back here too, but that'll be just behind the rear seat at the top of the rear seat, or seats if I go with buckets in back. But I would call that a success. It turns out really good, and I'm happy with it. Now I just have to copy that doggone thing again. But it wasn't so bad. Once the radius took some time to build, but once it's in, all this will have to get a little bit of filler sanded. I'm going to sandblast them, I guess. Get a little bit of filler, probably mount them, get all the screw holes to the mountings in, and then sand them while they're in, because they'll stay in one spot. It's going well. I got this one, that one, and that one left. I am over the hump. Hey guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Took them out and sandblasted them. Yeah, I laser cleaned them, but I didn't like the finish. So I got them all sandblasted, and then the bottom sides, I'll have some work to do on these, a little bit of body work. They turned out good, but they're not perfect. And so I hit them all with a couple of coats of self-etching primer. You know, there is some pitting in that, so I put 1.5 60-pound bags into them and cleaned them off, and some of them are great, some of them clearly had some leaks. That's what I'm using, Rust-Oleum self-etching, and I used that on the frame. I used it in 1 or 2 of my videos, so stuff gets hard as nails and should protect it. So you're working with 90-year-old metal, you know. There are some pits and stuff on the metal, you know. I'll get on these with, you know, the proper sandpaper and all that stuff when I get in there and start to finish them, bring them to finish. So that's the phase I'm on. I started on a profile for the rear window, and show you that. Just doing some stretching. I just made a little profile, did some stretching, and then I ripped it. So I'm rethinking it, basically. You know, I took a copy of the old profile, I made a drawing, and then I know I can get around that corner better than I did there, but I think I'm going to need to go to a larger break, make it in 2 pieces, probably a top and a bottom, you know, make that profile up halfway and then make that profile, so that I don't have to worry so much about the precision. You know, I can have them a little bit long, overlap, seam them, same thing I did with all that stuff. So alrighty, till the next one. Gotta let that cure. You saw that I painted them, but not the top sides. Those are still blasted. But you know, I gotta poke at the weld seams and some of the dings and dents that are in them. For the most part, they're in really good shape. But so then I decided, looking at the rear window, I made a profile, and then I got to thinking, you know what? Give you a different view here. So if I took, basically it's the channel, and then the trim piece goes back 1.5 inches. So you got your 5/8 channel. It goes back approximately 1.5 inches. No, it goes back. It's pretty precise. 5/8, 1.5 inches, and then it rolls down. And then I got to thinking, well, wait a minute. Why don't I just tie that into the rear panel? You know, instead of making a piece that basically holds, I'm going to back up a little bit, that basically holds the rear panel on, has a flange around it to secure the body panel. Why don't I make that, have the cloth, the fabric, the vinyl, the leather, whatever it is that I surround this with, roll up into the window, into the rear window, rather than putting a trim around it. And I thought, that's a pretty good idea. So then I wanted to know what the dash covered, so I threw the dash, and I finished wiring. I guess, you know, I wired up the windshield wipers down the window post and over. There's the connector right there, just to check to see that it worked. And then I thought, I'll put the dash in and see what he looks like, just so that I can have a good view. And sometimes it's good to look at where you came from to see how far you've gotten. So I yanked that dash out of the pile. That's the original gauge set, but it gives me some reference on what I can see and what I can't see and how I want to do it. I'm pondering a digital display here, and of course I have real estate down there and I have real estate over here, and it is a hot rod. I'm not going to have a whole bunch of trunk space or storage space, but some is possible. even up here. But as I look at it, I begin to think, well, shoot, I really only need to do 3 sides depending on how I do it. We can see how this rolls around and integrates. And I recessed this back, so don't know how I'm going to tie this in, but I think I'm going to probably tie this in all the way up. Maybe make it out of metal. I'm thinking about sweeping it, I just don't know for sure what I'm going to do. But I can have a couple of pockets up here, because I'm going to come out this distance. It's going to come up and it's going to sweep up to the ceiling, and I'll probably keep the ceiling flush with those original Suburban braces. So I got to come up with a plan to sweep all the way around and integrate the front. I don't want to cut off the door, so this could actually start in here and swoop out and around, and I could have a couple of trays that recess a little here and more on this side. There's a number of things I could do. Of course, I will be tying this into a console on both sides, because I'm going to have controls down in this area. I don't think I'm going to clutter the dash. I'm going to keep this in. There'll be a cover that goes over the top of that. I've been dreaming about that for the last couple of days and how I'm going to do that. And whether I don't know that I'm going to necessarily do wood trim or carbon fiber. I get some comments on that, what I'm going to do there, whether that's the right thing to do or not, I don't know. But all that's when I'm focused, right? So the moral of the story is, once you get frustrated with things that are going on and possibly even overwhelmed with where you're at and where you're going, because each piece has an effect on the next. In this case, the doors are going to have an effect on the dash, right? On how it all looks. Even the closed door, see how that closes out that slot in there? What is that supposed to look like, and how should that tie in? Those are all things that I think need to be taken into consideration. Once I had the dash and I threw the rubber in the channel, it's just laying in there, but to try to look at how I have the defroster arranged, and it looks like that worked out pretty good. There's a defroster pocket, and there's the other pocket right there, but there's going to be a gap between the window and the dash. And this was a flip out window, so this bottom seal was significantly different. Well, there was no channel up here. Everything kind of worked on a hinge that swept out. And I'm not going to have the windshield open. I'm going to build a channel for that side and split the bead here and then come up and around and all that. So I'll have to establish a closeout for this. And again, so the journey just keeps continuing on and on and on and on and on. But by chipping away, slowly and surely, I will get where I'm going. Sometimes it's good to look at where you came from. Helps reinvigorate. Hey guys, after much toil and concern and review and sleep, I decided to put those on there. So I welded them on and hit them with primer. So now when you look from the inside, of course they'll be painted the color. I won't have any issues on the quarter windows now. I'll retain the rubber. The other thing that I learned is I will have to, I'll have to put a band in here, a strip of sheet metal in here, because that rubber is just gonna. So the issue is that when I built the car, I had intentions of, back then, of having the windows were opened down, and you'd have to go back a bunch of videos to the, excuse me, to the very beginning to see that, I was trying to revive the original hinges. And it wasn't the fact that the original, that I couldn't revive them. I mean, you could make that stuff work. I just gave up on them because I shifted. This car was going to be kind of a classic look on a 4-cylinder, modern chassis, computer-controlled modern chassis in the very, very beginning, and I got rid of that dream right away. It seems like that's what happens every time. You wind up going to a hot rod. And this car was in such horrific shape when I got it. The body was in such horrible shape. So the combination of a number of things, divine intervention, I found that same yard had a 31 chassis, and then the story wound up telling itself. I am going to a hot rod. The fact that a friend of mine had a 331 Hemi, and it's been what bucket list item, if you want to call it that, a first gen Hemi. It's like, holy cow! It was like, I just got to do that. And then it wound up being the fuel injection and everything else, and stretching the envelope in a little different direction. So all related to putting little pieces of metal in here. And how'd I do it? Basically, I took a hole saw, got my diameter, which happened to be 2.5 inches, drilled a piece of 16 gauge. Okay, this is all 18 gauge, 18 or 20. I guess I haven't really measured it, but it welds well to 18. Took a piece of 16 gauge. There's the remnants of it. Took a hole saw, drilled the hole saw in, brought it over to the shear, and clipped each corner off of it. And I had four radii, and then just welded them on. Yay.